the meeting with Adrienne today and
Michael Merino from Merino Legal.
And Adrienne Klein from Azure Real Estate and Property Management, and we're both licensed and insured in the industry in the state of Florida. So today we want to talk about what happens when a boyfriend, a girlfriend, two girls, two boys, you and your uncle go out and buy a property, and whether it's for investment or they're going to live in it together. And, how does that work? Do you go for separate mortgages? Do you need an agreement? What are the repercussions? I mean, people aren't getting married anymore. They're just kind of living together, cohabitating. And again, you don't even have to be with a boyfriend or girlfriend. You could just be going into a property with your mother or your uncle.
Your friend.
You don't even have to be, you don't have to be related.
Yeah, and then this is a great topic, and it's one that I deal with a lot. I usually deal with it on when problems happen. So, everybody goes into these things like when you get married, you go into it with the best of intentions, or you go into a business deal or a partnership with someone into a business venture with the best of intentions. Nobody wants to think about failure.
But don't you have a cousin that ended up buying something with her boyfriend or something?
I do. It was actually my sister-in-law.
Okay, so this is a family thing that went on. Okay.
So with my sister-in-law, what happened was she had a boyfriend that she'd been dating for a while, and they wanted to buy a property. They didn't want to get married, but they wanted to buy a property together. And they called me, of course, being the family lawyer. I get all the calls to give the free advice. And so they called me and said, we're going to buy this house. And I said, well, listen, let's plan because, God forbid, what if he dies? What if he has credit issues? What if he has a judgment? What if he has a tax lien? This guy that you're with. It may all sound good now, but we need to talk about the what ifs.
So it's almost
what if things don't work out?
Almost like a prenup for a business arrangement.
It is absolutely a prenup.
Okay.
When you go into a business deal, you might do an operating agreement as part of your company to lay out what happens if things go south. Same thing if you're buying with your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your friend from down the street. That there should be an agreement as to what happens. There should be a buyout provision. What happens if somebody passes away? There maybe you want to have what we call key life insurance for that if one person passes away, the other one receives the money so that they can buy out the other person. Why? Because if I buy a person with my girlfriend, okay, or my brother or my friend or whatever, and they die, well, guess what? If it's not titled properly, I'm going to end up owning that property with their family members. Unintended consequences.
Wow.
So one of the unintended consequences that I could end up owning this property with a bunch of people I don't want to be partners with, but I'm forced to be partners with. Why? Because I didn't plan properly.
So does that become like tenants in common, or is there
Right,
something
right.
that
Well,
we
most
call
people
it?
most people just go and they buy the property and it's titled as Jane Smith and John Doe.
Okay.
And that's fine. And if everything works out great, no problem. But if John dies, guess what? Jane is going to own that property with John's heirs, with his family.
Wow.
Okay, we don't want that to happen, so we need an agreement that spells out, what happens if somebody dies. Maybe title the property differently so that it would be what we call a joint tenancy with rights to survivorship, which means when John passes, instead of it going to his family, John's interest is going to go directly to his significant other, the girlfriend or Jane, whatever.
So can you do this only when you have an all-cash deal when you're buying a property, or is this something that you can create for yourself even if you're going for a mortgage?
Well, in most cases, a lot of it will boil down to what to the lender's rules. But in most cases, if you're both applying for the mortgage, you're both liable under that mortgage, then you're both going to be on title. As to whether it's a tenancy in common or a joint tenancy, probably won't matter for the lender. The other way to do it, again, if it's a business venture where you're not going to live there, the better bet's probably going to be to put it in the name of a company and then have a shareholders agreement or operating agreement that dictates what happens if somebody wants to get out of the deal, if there's a buyout, if somebody dies. You can lay it all out. In the case of a boyfriend and girlfriend, again, it's just a simple agreement, something like a partnership agreement that we'll talk about what happens if it goes south.
I have a question. So Jane Doe and John Smith, and they go into a property and he decides to, have credit card issues or a spending issue. I'm not blaming the man or the woman.
Right.
But what happens if they have an addiction or they lose their job, or they say, I don't feel like paying anymore? Like, what are the repercussions in a situation like that?
Well, in a case like that, I would recommend, and then that's a great point, because this is what oftentimes happens. And it's not just when two people buy together. I get also people, a mom will come in and say, I want to add my son to title because I'm getting, older and I want to make sure he gets the property and I want to add him to title. Well, if you just add him to title and the son, John, has a federal tax lien, in the blink of an eye, the moment that deed is signed, that tax lien will automatically attach to the property and become a lien against the property. It's the same thing when Jane and John, boyfriend and girlfriend, are buying. If John has some issues or potential issues down the line, yes, those things will attach to the real estate. It will become a lien and you won't be able to sell it. And one of the partners is going to be out of luck because they went into a deal with someone who they didn't do due diligence on, which is another thing. Before you buy with somebody, check them out. Maybe run the credit, figure out, what do they have, do a little due diligence.
Hold on one second. I mean, not everyone's bad just because you're not marrying them. But what happens if you marry them, and people are getting married later in life? They're not getting married when they're 25.
Right.
They're waiting until they're 35, even 40 years old and beyond. So what happens then where everyone is coming together and they have a life previously before this union of they're getting married? Well, someone else owns a business. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
If you're married, well, first of all, if a couple that's married buys a property and one of them has credit issues, it won't matter. Why? Because in the state of Florida, credit issues or judgments against one of the parties will not attach to real estate that's owned by the marital estate.
Good to know.
So that's why getting married is going to help you, because it does give you some creditor protection. Now, the one thing I would recommend if I got a boyfriend and girlfriend that came in, or maybe even two partners, a Florida land trust is a good way to do it. It's a revocable trust, and there, even if one of them has a judgment, it won't affect the real estate. Okay, so that's one possible tool you can use.
Will that come into play where if two divorced people marry and maybe someone doesn't have, the husband doesn't have the will and now he's married for the second time, and then, what happens to the property that he came into the relationship with? Well, that, because when he was married, maybe he still owns something jointly with the first wife.
Yeah.
How does that affect the second wife? It's so complicated,
It
folks.
gets complicated, and yes, so, we want to add, we're adding another layer now. So the other layer, yes, that you have people who have a past, right? They got children from another marriage. They have properties they own. That it's more entangled, and there's more of a web to deal with. But there's ways to deal with it. And again, if you have that situation, it's just a matter of sitting down with us and with me, and to go over what we can do to avoid these things. There are mechanisms that you can use. You can use a company. You can use a trust. You can use a combination of those things. But the bottom line is that if you don't seek counsel, then you will wind up like my sister-in-law, who wound up with a property with a judgment.
Wow.
She wound up with a guy that was a lunatic, et cetera, and it would cost a lot of money, a lot of time, and legal fees to disentangle herself from the web she got herself into.
So this is one of the things, before we go to Michael, and I start working with buyers, and people are married, not married, going through a divorce, already engaged before the other divorce is final. How is it going to affect everything? And this is where I will go, and after discussing with my buyers what they want to do, contact Michael so we can sort this out before we go and put a deposit on anything.
Right, and I'm very accessible. I mean, when Adrienne's working with buyers or sellers, and she gives me a call, we can usually get on a phone call the same day, have a consultation. In our business, time is of the essence.
Exactly.
So we know that timing is everything, and somebody needs some counseling or some help with something. We're readily available to help.
Both accessible, both professionals. How many years are you doing this now?
26 almost.
And I'm up at 18. So between the two of us,
yes,
we look great for 22. Anyway, thanks for checking in with Mike and Adrienne for a market update in real estate. Hope to see you boots on the ground. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.